Well, here we are at lecture 55, having now proceeded through P1, P2, the mirror symmetry bases like CM, PM, and M. Then we increased the symmetry by then having both the P2 and more complex, more higher symmetries like P2MM. Which means that the bases became having right angles in the two-dimensional cells, which then produced the orthorhombic crystal system, and we had an additional variant of that because of the C2MM base. We ended up with a face-centered cell. Well, once we've gone already to the base being rectangular, obviously the next choice up in symmetry is to make the base square, but not necessarily make the Z transition the same length as the base. So here we're going to go to a higher symmetry base, but not require Z, just like we've been doing. We haven't required Z to be any particular length so far. We're going to continue to keep that random until we have to change it. And so that's going to lead us to the tetragonal lattice. So here we have the P4 bases. We have the simple P4, and then we have the P4. We've added the P4MM, which remember induced some glide planes as well. And then we have the P4GM, where we said, hey, you know what, let's put the offset glide planes in here, fourfold symmetry, and we induced these red planes as well, the mirror planes. So I think that with the fourfold axis, you can see that you have a fairly limited number of translations, and they're all going to be consistent with the mirror planes because the symmetry elements and the glide planes and everything all move when you move the fourfold. So basically, all of these patterns will have the same choices and fairly limited choices. Either I go above this fourfold axis itself directly up, or I go to the center. And that's really just about it. There are not too many other choices. I can't go to the twofold axes because they're twofold. So if I have a T3 coming up here, and then it ends on this face, and it's above here, and it's not. It's a twofold axis, so that doesn't work since there's a twofold axis there in the base. So this guy has to slide and be over the other fourfold axis. That means I have two choices. In this case, not surprising, what happens? This whole layer just moves up as usual. So T3 is 0, 0, Z. And I end up with, yes, you guessed it, tetragonal primitive, and nothing else to say. Of course, I could go to here, any place above this fourfold axis, because it'll be above another fourfold axis. In that case, we can do our usual transformation. And that should be a square, just square base, just in perspective. So If you think that's a rectangle, it is not. This bottom part's a square, this top part's a square, and these sides are rectangles. And so as we did before, I take this as the corner. Let's call this T1, this T2. Then obviously T3 going straight up here is this case, and it's just a simple, I have this P4 base in here, I have this P4 base up there, and that's it. However, I could have a situation where I do, like I said, going to the middle. Let's draw that here. So this can be the original T3, but what I do, as I did before, is continue on to this opposite corner. I can subtract T1 and T2, because, the way to think about that, by the way, is I'm just stacking all these, nearby. It's a lattice, so all these boxes are on top of each other. So I can always translate a full T1 or T2 anytime I want, because it's just going to another part that's stacked above this anyway. And so then I would have, as I've done many times, a new T3. It's a double cell. It's a bodied centered, so this would be body centered tetragonal, which I'm sure you can't read because I'm losing pixelization, but that's a bodied centered tetragonal. And if you want to know a cool material that is body centered tetragonal, is tin. The warmer temperature for tin. Tin is interesting that actually if you cool it down below 13 degrees Celsius, you end up with a transformation, and it goes into into a cubic system. And so it's a very unstable actually around room temperature. So that's an interesting thing about tin. The bodied centered tetragonal form of tin is actually the high temperature version. It just happens to be that high temperature is, room temperature in a way. So very interesting material. And also when you cool it below 13 degrees, it becomes what's called alpha tin, which is the cubic. It's actually diamond cubic structure, and it's supposed to have an identically zero band gap. So it's a semi-metal with a zero band gap. So anyway, that's a bodied centered tetragonal phase. And remember, bodied centered tetragonal is represented by, so it'd be an I tetragonal.